BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Farming Today podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In this episode, livestock will soon have to be tested before moving from England to Wales or Scotland.
I simply cannot, in all good conscience, invite Bluetongue into Wales on the 1st of July.
More on that later. Let's start, though, with the stuff of life, bread. All week we've been following the journey from field to bread bin. Today we're at the millers. Anna Hill has been to meet David Wright from a family of millers in Essex who can trace their roots right back to the Doomsday Book. Today they supply the major bakeries, make supermarket own brand flours and sell their own named brand too.
We're looking at a brand new factory. It's absolutely amazing. Huge silos, lots and lots of shiny metal, and a delivery of wheat is just arriving. The lorry's just arrived. It's on the weighbridge. We're just going into the lab now.
This is the laboratory where we're doing the testing of the wheat that's coming through. The lorry comes on, it's speared, it's sampled, they get a representative sample. So making sure that the wheat looks healthy, smells nice, and doesn't have any kind of bugs and that sort of thing.
My name is Alistair Gale. I'm Chief Executive of UK Flour Millers, which is the trade association.
What percentage of bread wheat in the UK is grown here at home?
So in a normal harvest year, about 85% of the milling wheat is coming from UK farms. So you could get up to 4 million tonnes of UK grown wheat is bought by millers every year.
That's the sound of the grain coming out of the back of the lorry. We're with David Wright. You're showing me the grains here in your hands, and if I pick them up now, this has been stored for nearly a year.
Half of our wheat comes from stores and the other half comes direct from farms, so it's very much down to the farmer as well to make sure that grain is kept in good condition. We've taken the wheat in from the wheat intake. It's held in these dry wheat bins. It's blended, and then we make a grist, which is grist to the mill, the old saying, where we will take different types of grain, blend them together, and put it through a conditioning process. Then here, what you're seeing through this window is the roller mills that open the wheat and release that endosperm that we need for white flour.
Can we go and see the actual sieving process?
Yes.
We have in front of us large boxes, rather like sort of porter cabins, but they are being wobbled.
In one cabinet there would be 24 different sieves, ranging from a very coarse sieve at the top to a very fine sieve at the bottom.
So we've just come out of the factory where the flour is being milled. Whoa, this is a big warehouse. So how many different sorts of flours do you make?
Hundreds.
You've got pizza flour there.
You'll see this wild farm flour, which is regen, and of course half our business is going out in bulk tankers in 28, 29 tonne loads.
And that goes direct to the bakers.
All bakers want consistency in the product, so having that consistency is absolutely vital, and that absolutely starts with a consistent wheat product.
That report from Anna Hill. The UN Oceans Summit in Nice ends later today. It's hoped more countries will ratify a high seas treaty and so bring it into force. The agreement was actually made 2 years ago to put 30% of international waters into marine protected areas by 2030. But even within those areas, bottom trawling will be allowed. Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall is amongst many campaigners who say that must change.
There's been a pretty united front from marine conservation NGOs, backed by a lot of good science, showing that the extraordinary damage done by this form of fishing is having a long-term negative consequence, not just for the marine wildlife on the ocean floor, but for fish stocks and therefore for the fishing industry as well.
Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall speaking on Radio 4 earlier this week. Bottom trawling is already banned in some English waters, and the government is consulting on plans to extend that ban. The National Federation of Fishermen's Organisations has called the proposal disappointing and pushed back on the claims of environmental damage. Michael Kaiser is Professor of Fisheries Conservation at the Lyell Centre at Heriot Watt University.
Bottom trawling inevitably causes some alteration to the seabed. So it's in physical contact, you'll have abrasion, and just in the same way, when a farmer is ploughing a field, there's going to be a change to the habitat. But those changes vary between one habitat and another, and also depends on the type of fishing gear that you're using.
We've heard a lot this week from campaigners saying that this has to stop because they say it is so damaging. Is that fair?
I think that's rather a simplistic view of bottom trawling. What we find is that where trawling occurs in shallow coastal areas that are subjected to winter storms and strong coastal tidal currents, those animal and plant communities that live there are adapted to the physical abrasion that comes from nature. If we think back a couple of years to the large winter storms that we had around the UK coastline, we saw a huge amount of damage. Fishermen were even picking crab pots 60 metres up cliffs, which had been thrown up by the waves. The entire seabed was lifted onto the promenade of Aberystwyth. So we shouldn't underestimate the force of nature. But of course, fishing also is another form of disturbance, just like natural forms of disturbance. And so if fishing occurs in those areas where we have large amounts of natural disturbance, the impact of fishing is going to be less because the animal communities living there are adapted to frequent disturbance. But then if fishing occurs in less frequently disturbed environments, the impact is going to be longer lived, inevitably.
And I suppose the argument would be that a big storm is something we have no control over, but we can control where and how people fish. And so to conserve things, we ought to do that.
It depends on the objectives of what it is that we're trying to achieve. So, I mean, if we have rare and sensitive species or long-lived species which are of conservation importance, trawling may not be compatible with them. But we already manage areas of our sea in relation to that, and trawling already has been excluded from certain areas as a result of that. And the current consultation surrounding the 41 marine protected areas will be looking very much at whether trawling is compatible with those areas. What we need to remember, though, is that there are other areas of the seabed where trawling is producing large amounts of fish for us, and I think it's very important that we remember that these areas continue to produce fish and shellfish year on year. So the argument that the trawling is damaging the marine ecosystem in these areas is flawed. Otherwise, if that was the case, they wouldn't continue to produce fish and shellfish.
As you say, the government is thinking about extending the ban. Is that the answer?
Inevitably, I think in some areas of the seabed, we're going to need to see a ban on trawling. But for other areas, I think we can be much more sophisticated on our management. Currently, we have the technology to track fishing vessels. That's now being rolled out to the entire UK fleet. It means we can actually start to manage the system from the perspective of limiting damage to the seabed. So at the moment, we have fishing quotas, which limit how much fish or shellfish we take out of the sea. If we move towards an ecosystem-based approach to fisheries management, the other aspect that we can also manage is the amount of seabed disturbance. So we could have what we call a habitat disturbance quota, and that would really put the UK at the forefront of sustainable fisheries.
Professor Michael Kaiser. Livestock moving from England to Wales will have to be tested from next month. The Welsh Government says that once the whole of England becomes a restricted zone for the Bluetongue disease on the 1st of July, animals will have to test negative for it before they can go into Wales, at a cost of about £35 per test, which farmers will pay. There have been no cases of Bluetongue in Wales or Scotland this year. There, the government also decided this month that animals should be tested if they're coming from a restricted zone. Earlier this week, the Livestock Auctioneers Association warned on this programme that limiting the movement of animals across the borders would be catastrophic. Bluetongue is a virus spread by biting midges which affects cattle, sheep and goats, but not humans. It can cause abnormalities in pregnancies, reduce milk yields and even be fatal. The Welsh Rural Affairs Minister, Hugh Iranca-Davies.
We have a very proud and hard-worked record in Wales of keeping Bluetongue out of Wales. Our preference would have been to maintain that two-county distance so that we have a buffer strip that we could work with and keep Bluetongue out even longer and away from the incursion westwards. However, even though we regret the snapping out of this to the England-Wales border, we understand the pressures that the England-UK minister and the industry was under there. However, I simply cannot, in all good conscience, invite Bluetongue into Wales on the 1st of July. So we're going to do our damnedest, pardon my French, to keep this out for as long as we possibly can. But if the reality on the ground changes, we are able to change our approach to it. But for now, we're going to battle to keep this out.
This raises some practical issues. Animals going from England to Wales have to get a test. That's around £35 a go. And then there's the time that will take, because there is only one lab. You haven't done an economic impact assessment here. It could be tricky, this, couldn't it?
Yes, well, let's be frank. There's no time to do a traditional full impact assessment here. We're dealing with the incursions of a disease that is spreading westwards right across the UK. And we're trying to work, by the way, with the UK government as well on this, because it's our shared intent to try and lock this back as much as we can. But yes, there will be costs with this, and we've been working with farmers and with the livestock sector to make sure that we have the supply chain of vaccinations, and we can actually augment that supply chain of vaccinations, which, by the way, we're quietly confident that we can do. And part of the tools for holding this back will then be in the hands of farmers in looking at where they're sourcing their animals from, but also in terms of vaccinating animals as well. But yes, this does have costs. This is not an easy decision. It's not going to be easy for farmers, but it's better than the minister simply saying, let's invite Bluetongue here into Wales on the 1st of July.
Is there an appetite for vaccination with Welsh farmers? We've spoken to farmers across the country in the past, and they haven't been that keen, partly because they don't see Bluetongue as being that serious this time around, and partly, again, the cost, £2 to £3 per dose.
Yeah, I think this has changed the reality on the ground, because from the moment that you snap the border up right up to the England and Wales border, where there are very high densities on both sides of that border of livestock, of cattle and of sheep, then that increases the risk here of the incursion of the disease. So on that basis, we already have farmers, by the way, who are using the vaccine and using it successfully. There is a tool at hand. Yes, there is a cost with it, but that is one of the tools that farmers can now deploy to help us keep the disease out.
Are you hopeful that you can keep Bluetongue out, or is it more a question of when, not if?
I'm hopeful that we can. It's not a lost battle. However, I am realistic about this as well. We could see incursions into Wales, and we might have to change the approach. And if we do so, we will do it like we did when we made this decision. We held a roundtable of all the stakeholders on the 5th of June. We went through with them their views, but we also made clear to them that whatever decision we come to, we'll try and do this in the best interest of not just the animals, but farmers and the industry. And the decision we've made does buy us time to actually think through what happens if we have an incursion. How do we then react to that? But we'll do that with the industry as well.
The Welsh Rural Affairs Minister, Hugh Iranca-Davies. Just a reminder that you still have time to nominate someone for the BBC Food and Farming Awards. Here at Farming Today, we've joined with the Archers for the Farming for the Future Award, which will be judged by me and Mally Heriot, who plays Natasha Archer. Now, we are looking for farmers who are at the forefront of making the industry more sustainable, both environmentally and financially. So if you know a bold, innovative farmer who deserves some recognition and needs a giant ornamental chopping board, we want to know all about them. You can, of course, nominate yourself. You've got until midday on Monday, the 30th of June. Go to bbc.co.uk/food awards, where you will also find the terms and privacy notice. That's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Rebecca Rooney, and Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.